So again, today's topic is Idiot's Guide to Firebug. I put the politically correct title for those who may potentially be offended by being called an idiot. Joke. Sorry? No, unfortunately, I don't have an adapter for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all right. So, of course, I haven't started the thingamabob yet.
That's better.
That's better, isn't it? Right. So that line, we're going to look at the inspect tool, which is basically just having a look at the HTML, and it gives you a brief overview of the CSS. We'll look at where your CSS comes from within templates. And we're going to look at live CSS editing. So if you've got a template that you want to edit and you want to just change a font size or something, how you can do that before you actually put it in the template itself, so you can see it live in front of you and not have to reload the page every time. Then we'll also look at adding, deleting, and changing HTML on the fly, which is kind of like the CSS thing, but for HTML, which will be good. And for those of us who do some front end, maybe some jQuery, making things fade in and out, drop down menus and stuff like that, we'll just look at using the JavaScript console and making more sense of that as well. And I'll just show you how to test your jQuery as well, just a little bit about that. And we'll have a look at Firebug Extensions as well, which is a little bit of an interesting topic. And then if you have any questions, we can see how we go with that. So we're assuming that you know how to install Firebug, Firefox, and Joomla, that you're using Firefox for, because that's what we were using today, and that you have basic familiarity with Firebug, and you should get it today, hopefully anyway, going through with it. I've got some handy links there, which will obviously be up on the website later at some point, so that'll give you the place where do you get the extra extensions and stuff like that, which should be good. All right, so we'll start with the inspect tool. The inspect tool is designed to pinpoint the HTML you see on the screen. Sometimes the inspected elements that you see are not actually what comes from the server, and I'll explain a bit about that later. But the cool thing is that sometimes when you have page elements that are generated dynamically, you can actually see what they look like when they've been generated, which sometimes you can't do from the server. So yeah, but we'll get that as we go through. I'll just open up Firefox, which is meant to be prepared with the site I have open, but it's not. Oh, there it is. All right, so I think the first one is inspect my element, yeah. All right, so obviously when you've got a page template and you're wanting to edit a particular element, for instance, you might be looking at a heading and going, okay, I'd like to change the color of an element. And you pop over to this little icon here. I don't know if you guys can see that from where you are. It's got a little mouse over a square. It's called the inspect tool. Most of you know you can hover over the element, click on it, and that'll keep it, and you can see it in your, I don't know what to call it really. I think it's called the DOM inspector. So that just gives you basically the content and everything. You can see the HTML. And on the right-hand side, what most people here have been interested about is this panel on the right-hand side, which tells you about the CSS. Basically, this panel on the right-hand side here, it basically gives you a hierarchy of styles. So if you might have set the entire page to have a certain font, but you've set that particular heading to have a different font, it'll show the style for that particular element first, and then show you the body. So it just kind of just gives you where the styles are all coming from. On the right-hand side, you'll see it has a link actually to the CSS that particular style is coming from. So right now, I've just clicked on this here, which is a paragraph. And on the right-hand side, it's showing me that, for instance, I've got a line height of 1.7 EM, and that's coming from the layout.css. So if I click on that, that will take me to here. Which doesn't give you very much information, but if you click on there, it actually shows you all the CSS files, but you can see the one that's ticked is the file that you've just wanted to look at, for where that style's come from. It actually shows you up the top the location on your server where that's come from, so you can navigate to that from there, which is pretty cool. I'll just go back to my PowerPoint and get my footing. I think I might come back to that later. I designed some of the stuff thinking that a lot of people would be coding, but apparently that's not true. All right, so what we might do is we'll move on to the live CSS, so how you can edit styles and things within the page, which I find is pretty cool. If we click on the header of this here, so I don't know if you can see that. We might, okay, first thing is in this page, the headers have been given a font family of something called Titilium Maps. I don't know what that is. Sorry, I thought someone had a question. On the left-hand side, if you hover over it, you'll see that there is a crossed out circle. If you click on that, that will actually disable the style, and you see how it slightly changed within the page. So that's a cool thing. If you've, for instance, changed the margin of an element, you can click that button to kind of take that change away and see what it looks like without that, which I think is pretty cool. If you click anywhere along the right-hand side of this, double-click, sorry, you can start typing in CSS straight into the page. So if I want to give that header an underline, for instance, I might type in text decoration with a colon and then say underline, like that. And you can already see it's displayed on the page already. So that just gives you a brief way of how you can change the CSS in there. Now, something that I haven't looked into much is that if I go and click on that link on the right-hand side again to go to that particular CSS file, I can also there's something called a live edit, and I'm not entirely sure what it does, but I think I was playing around with it today, but I think it changes things similar to what the other one does, but it stays in that file when you reload the page. So I thought that was quite good. I think changes you make when you inspect an element, if I refresh the page, I think that won't stay. Yeah, so it disappears when you refresh the page.
But you're not actually writing to the server.
No, this is all done,
Browser-based.
the browser-based, so you can change, basically, if I wanted to, I could sit there and create an entirely new template and then copy, if we go back to Firefox.
So it could be quite a good way to do mock-ups and things.
Yeah, exactly.
Just go and change things.
Yeah, the only thing I'd be worried about is that if you, I think these files they potentially would reload, so if you accidentally refresh the page, you might lose all your changes. But I think that's the purpose of this source edit, or if you click on the right-hand side, it says live edit. I think that's the purpose of that. It might not reload the page. Again, I haven't had enough time to look into that.
So you're editing a CSS that's local?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So yeah, it's a good feature if you want to completely redesign a website and say, okay, that looks good, and then just take the code that you've edited, because I know it appears here when you change it in that inspect area. My apologies if my words slur. I get really thirsty when I'm nervous, so I keep drinking lots. All right, so we've just been through live CSS editing. Just make sure I haven't missed anything. I guess we can move on to changing HTML on the fly. So if you, for instance, let's look at this page. Let's just say you wanted to add another paragraph. I don't understand the practicality of that, perhaps, but if you wanted to add an extra part to it.
Or if you were changing the text for a mock-up purpose and you wanted to...
Yeah, you could do that. If you double-click within an element, it actually gives you the ability to change, I think, particular line. So I can change that entire thing and say, oh, sorry, that was an attribute. Yeah, so within the element, if you double click in between the two tags, it'll allow you to change the content of it. So I'll just say, and it instantly updates on there as well. And it was working before, but you could, I don't know what's happened to my computer, but you were able to double click on the right hand side, and that would also add an extra place for you to start typing in HTML if you wanted as well. So you could add unlimited paragraphs. If you, for instance, wanted to add an extra part to the navigation at the top, you could do that, although Joomla obviously has its own way of doing that. But yeah, there are some cool things about that. Oh, yes. And probably the most interesting thing that a lot of people don't think about is if you double click inside, please work. I'm going to go to this tab. No? Is it? It doesn't like me today.
Are you running a trace?
Oh, what, sorry?
A trace.
No, I don't think so. Oh, goodness me. How embarrassing is this? Well, anyway, one thing that most people don't think is when they change an HTML attribute, perhaps you might have changed in one of your style sheets for your template, you might have added an extra class which might say that you want something to have a greater padding and things like that. So it might be named something like, I don't know, my new class. And you can, well, you should be able to double click in here and type in class equals, and you can put that in there so you can change an entire style that way as well. So that was just a little extra thing I wanted to add there. So I moved on a bit faster than I wanted to because things aren't working as well as I wanted them to. But the next thing we'll look at is using the JavaScript console. So one thing sometimes what happens is if you click, if you want to test links on a page, for instance, and you act like you might want to not move to another page, you can actually type in a little bit of JavaScript into Firebug's console to stop the page from reloading, and it'll actually confirm whether you want to reload. So simple things like that. You can also, for instance, if you're using jQuery or any other kind of JavaScript framework, you can change animations dynamically, so you can see what it looks like instead of having to go back to your server and change the code on the server and come back and do it again. So another interesting thing for those who are doing a little bit more JavaScript, I don't know if any of you guys do JavaScript? Do you do JavaScript? Is if you're writing a long piece of code, there's something called breakpoints, which allows you to stop the code at that particular point. And yeah, I'll go through that, I guess. And also to see JavaScript errors and where they're occurring, because I think, as most of you know, or would know if you use JavaScript, IE isn't usually very helpful with that. I shall take a drink again. Right, so the console tab brings up a lovely little thing, which at the moment has nothing inside it, but if I'm going to move to a page which has some JavaScript errors in it, just to give you a quick show of that. And it's probably going to be hard to see, unfortunately. I'm sorry, guys. So I've just created a standard page, but what I've added to it is I've added two links, and this link, what this one does is it will just hide and display this paragraph here when I click on it. That's not. So if I click on it again, it'll reveal the page, and that's without reloading again. If I click on this link, it's going to take me to another page, which I don't want it to do. For those of you who do a bit of JavaScript programming, again, you might have come across something called Ajax, which for those who don't know, basically means the page will reload without reloading the entire page, so you'll get new content without reloading, and that seems to be a standard which is coming up in web design a lot more recently. So I think first off we'll start off with stopping the page from reloading. I conveniently have some script that I copied from somewhere else, so I don't have to type it myself. I'm just going to copy that. And so down the bottom here, there's this little, what you might call a command line. To me, it looks terrible. I rather have it on the right-hand side where I can see more. There's a little icon over the right-hand side here, which allows me to pull it up to the side there. I can type in code directly to the side there. So I'm just going to paste that in, edit it slightly. So what I've done there is I've just created a little JavaScript function which will confirm to me saying, do I want to reload the page or not? And I'm just, down the bottom there's a button called Run, and I'll click that. And over on the right hand side, the JavaScript console's just told me that's what I've put into the command line, and it's shown me in very non-descriptive terms what the result of that is. So if I now click on this faulty Ajax link, it will actually ask me whether I want to leave the page, because that link was meant to keep me on the page, but it wasn't. So I can now click cancel and I'll stay on the page. Apparently it wasn't. Yeah. The point of that is now that I'm able to see the error that was causing the page to reload. And for some strange reason, it's not showing me the line number. I think if that's within another JavaScript file, it'll actually tell you the line number and the file, and you can click on it and actually look at what the file looks like, and it shows you where it is. Again, the same as the CSS when you clicked on that link on the side. So that's basically just told me that something called test is not defined. The excellent thing I can do now is that I can actually, sorry, I just need to inspect this element, which is there, and I can see that it's running a function called test, and that's what it's saying is not defined, that function is not working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to that console button over there, and I'm actually going to write that function myself so that I won't receive an error anymore. Like so. And I'm just going to run that. And that's told me that it's working. And so now if I click that faulty Ajax link, it's going to actually work the way it should and not reload the page. So that's I guess the beauty of the JavaScript console is it allows you to directly type in JavaScript without having to, again, go back to the server, put it in your code, save it, and then refresh the page. Yeah. And now if we... so same thing with the for those who...
If you want to make it permanent, you still have to go back.
Yes, you do. But usually you would you'd type in the code, and if it worked, you'd then copy that code across to your server. So because even if you refresh the page, I'm pretty sure it stays there from memory.
What if you've got a lot of changes to make?
If you have a lot of changes to make, you're probably better off.
Put this one back, put that one back.
In that case, you're probably better off running a local version, so running a web server on your computer itself.
Yeah.
I guess that's the fastest way if you've got really big changes. This is more if you're sort of dealing with small cosmetic changes and small things that you want to check. You know, if you've got a few errors here and you don't know why. I know some people have a lot of trouble with drop-down menus as well. I know that sometimes JavaScript can go badly on that one. I was going to hide this element with jQuery. If I now use that inspect tool that we were using before, I can see that when I'm clicking on it, it's running this little jQuery function called toggle. I could, if I wanted to now, I can either change that element obviously by double clicking like I showed you before and editing that and pressing enter, or I could go back to the console and type in some JavaScript here to change that as well, which is pretty simple. So, is there any questions before I continue? No, all good? Okay. All right, so Firebug has some excellent extensions. One, I think, which you'll be all mostly interested for the. Did any of you guys go to the last? Oh, sorry.
Well, if we're leaving the JavaScript stuff, I'll just ask a quickie. Sometimes when I generate web pages, HTML, I have script sections.
Yes.
I should generate a JavaScript in a script element. Sometimes I can find those script elements in Firebug, and sometimes I can't. And even though, and then when I can't find it, I think, did it actually get up there? I put an alert in, and it runs. So it obviously runs, but I still can't find it where it should be in the HTML. Do they disappear, do you know?
As in the actual script disappears
Yeah, the
in
script
Joomla.
element. Yeah.
I've noticed that Joomla has some quirky behavior with some extensions. I last worked for a company called Creation Ministries, and it would compress all the JavaScript in a page. You might possibly have an extension that's taking that out of the page and compressing it or something like that. And I find that sometimes with those extensions, they can be a little bit haywire when you add things to them and change things, because some pages will cache what some of the JavaScript that it's sending out, but other parts won't be cached. And so you might have added a bit of JavaScript down the bottom of your page and some at the top, but it's cached the stuff at the top, so you won't see that change for maybe a few hours. So I've seen that kind of thing happen a few times as well. Sometimes Firebug is actually a web page itself that's wrapped inside some XML and something like that, from what I've heard. And so it's bound to the same problems sometimes as the browser itself. So sometimes you do get quirky errors where it won't show you a line number or something like that, which is difficult. But you usually find...
You should check your global settings for your cache.
No, for the cache, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that.
I have a lot of trouble like that, not with JavaScript, but with caching things. And it doesn't appear, and you wonder whether it's working or not.
Well,
and I switch mine off altogether. Yeah.
For the duration,
Yeah. Otherwise, you get quirky behaviour and you waste a lot of time.
Right, but I'm not. It's the JavaScript that I can't find isn't in the file. It's you load test.php. Test.php echoes out HTML head/head body/body script. Hello there /script. And sometimes I can't find the script.
The script in
I mean, that's a simple example.
Yeah.
It's just a quirk.
If you right-click and view source, you can see it though.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm used to Firebug, doing it in Firebug.
Yeah.
And just sometimes I notice the script is run, but the elements disappear. I just wonder if it's a transient thing or...
Probably what would answer that, I think, again, is that Firebug is actually technically a web page, and so it's probably caching some parts of it itself anyway. So, and I think that functionality is actually in the config anyway. For those who don't know, in Firefox you can actually type in about :config, and it gives you a whole heap of things to change the way your browser works, and half of it doesn't make sense, so don't look at it unless you've got instructions to from a web page.
Can I ask another one? Before I couldn't see from here, but you were looking at the JavaScript that would run on a mouse click or something?
Yeah.
So it was on click equals? Or
yes, that's correct. Yeah, it was just part of the HTML of the page.
When you used jQuery to dynamically bind some JavaScript to an event,
yes.
It's not there in the HTML, it's not there as an attribute loaded from the server.
Yeah.
Is there any way using Firebug, Console, etc., you can actually see those dynamically bound?
Yeah, you can. All you have to do is type in the, so for instance, if it's an on bind, so sorry, this may be a bit out of, for instance, you might have, so you've selected a particular element, and then you put the dot bind, and instead of putting a function in that like you would to set something to that event, you put it without the function, and you should see the function turn up in the Firebug console. So you notice how I've typed stuff into this window on the right-hand side. That's where you type it. And underneath it would actually show you the result of what that function should do. So again, quirky behavior means it sometimes doesn't come up, but you should see that in there.
Okay, thanks.
That's all right. Is there any more questions before we go on? Okay, cool. So as I was saying, last week I think you guys were looking at making Joomla faster. Some of you might not have been here for that, which is a very interesting topic because you get the fun of dealing with obviously mobile browsers now and dealing with web browsers. And Firebug has a few extensions, and one I wanted to show you guys was called Why Slow. Yeah, it's really good because you can obviously do this from Yahoo itself, but it's good to have it actually inbuilt into Firebug itself. Now, they actually allow you to run the tests from within and give you the ability to print it out, which is, I think, is pretty cool as well. So I'm just going to run the latest version on the page. There is a run button somewhere down the bottom. I think it's pretty bad that on the latest Joomla it's pretty bad by standards, but that's unfortunate. So if we go through that, it will show us, it gives you a list of things that you can do to make your web page slow. In this case, it said that we need to make fewer requests back to the server from the browser, that we need to put our JavaScript at the bottom, and shrinking files as well is a good thing. So yeah, but there's heaps of extensions like that for those of you who do PHP programming. You can actually send your PHP errors out to Firebug instead of viewing it in that ugly way. That's a extension called PHP Fire, I think, and that displays it in the Firebug console instead of having it display on the web page, which is also good if you need to test a site that's actually live at the time. So if you're writing an extension, you can see what's happening, the errors happening behind the scenes without it actually affecting your users, so they don't see the error. They just might see a partially blank page or something, which is obviously not a good thing, but it's better than sometimes them seeing an error. And there's other ones, like for instance, cookies. I don't know if many of you know about what cookies are. Yeah, okay, cool. So it just allows you to see the cookies that the page is sending you. For those of you who program sometimes, it's good to see what information they produce. But yeah, there's lots of different extensions that you can get for Firebug, which allow you to just view more about your page. I think, yes, one more thing. In the net panel, this is very interesting for those of you who want to shrink your page down. There is an extension which shows you visibly how long a page is taking to load, but without that, Firebug will actually tell you the size and the time it takes to load a page, the elements of a page. So if you're referencing like 6 different CSS files in your template, it'll show up there about how long it's taken to load and how big it is and all that kind of thing. So that can kind of help you see where the big bottlenecks are happening in your Joomla sites as well. So
What's that one called?
that's the net panel. You should all have that as a standard Firebug installation, but there is a extension which allows you to view that bar that you can see on the side, which sort of visually represents the time that it's taken. I find that easy on the eye. I have all of that inside the PowerPoint slide, so you guys can view that. I'll put it through a comment or something. I'll put it as a message board update if need be. I think, yeah, so I've just listed a few things, a few extensions that might be of interest to you guys, and I'll display that now so you can kind of maybe get a head start if you want to write it down. So there's FirePHP for those of you who are dealing with modules and extensions. FireCookie, which is that thing that shows you all the cookies on the page and what information they hold. That's also good for even those who don't know how to deal with things. Sometimes those cookies can reveal secret information that you don't want anybody to know. If you've got a extension or something that you've added that's displaying stuff that it shouldn't through a cookie, you'll be able to see that. YSlow, which I just mentioned. Console export, I find, is very interesting. If you've got a lot of errors, you can export that to somewhere so that you can maybe change things and reload the page, but you've still got that list of errors that you've already had. There's also one called Sen SEO. I didn't get time to install it again today, but it helps you see how SEO wise, I guess, your page is, so how good it is with engine optimization and all that kind of stuff. So that's built in the you can download that extension for Firebug. I think it's probably one of the most useful for everyone here. And Crossfire is there, but I cannot remember for the life of me what that does. It was important when I wrote it in. So, yeah. Unfortunately, my nervousness has probably taken out half of what I wanted to say today, but yeah, I hope that helps some of you, and if you have more questions about it, I can take you through. I don't mind doing that. So yes.
These extensions, do they update regularly?
Yes.
I hate having to put new extensions on,
Yeah.
half a dozen. And then a new version comes up, you're continually upgrading things.
Yeah, no, a lot of these will update, unfortunately, because obviously Firefox updates and there are bugs to be getting rid of, so yeah, they will do that. Yeah. Does anybody have any more questions?
You mentioned a website, I think, in regards to CSS. Early on in the piece.
CSS School, was it?
Oh.
I think it was.
CSS School. If you just Google CSS School, you come up with a web page for that, and within that headline you can type in what you're learning about into the actual sample and see it update. And it's very well done.
Did I mention something I don't know nothing about?
No,
Andrew mentioned it.
Oh, Andrew mentioned
So it's really good. So usually I'm so lazy, I'll sort of go, oh, I know there's a function that does this. I'll just Google it and go, that's it, and then of course forget about it.
Are there tricks to validating JavaScript for Internet Explorer? I recently developed a small site over working with Firefox. And the important thing, and I suppose I should check on the Explorer. A small percentage of people wrote it in the Explorer. And it hit the dust on the little icon, whatever it was, a little eye at the bottom. I click on it, and it gives me some weird error message and thankfully a line number. So ultimately I was able to work my way back and scratch my head. It turned out in this case that whereas Firefox happily allows elements of an object with a comma, even appended to the last element of the object, I think the Explorer hates it and look at the dust. Is there any tricks that,
the web developer toolbar for IE, I think, is probably the closest.
Okay, I've seen that. I haven't used it.
Yeah,
Really.
and for those of you who mostly use IE or any other browser, there's something called Firebug Lite, which is basically you can just place a little script tag into the header of your template, and that'll allow you to view Firebug, like a minified version of Firebug. So it doesn't have all the functionality that I just showed you, but it allows you to view it within things like IE and Safari and that. So yeah.
Chrome.
Oh, there's one called Chromebug if you're using Google Chrome. Chromebug is, but again, I found that is really buggy at the moment. So
Hence the name.
yeah.
With the web developer plugin, is it what it's called?
It's called Developer Toolbar.
Oh, you develop a toolbar. Okay. I've got a web developer toolbar for Firebug, just on the IE website.
Yeah, you should be able to find it there.
It's not anything like Firebug, but
Has anybody looked at Firefox 4 yet, which has just come out?
That's what I was using just there. Yeah. It is terrible.
It's a vast improvement on the earlier version.
Yeah, it is. As far as JavaScript goes, there's so many sites I've seen that have broken because of it. So from like your drop-down menus and stuff like that.
So what's broken? Is it Firefox 4 or is it the other sites?
I guess the sites haven't updated their code for Firefox yet. I think Firefox 4. I think it's a bit stricter. I think it's a bit stricter in the way it works.
It's using later rev with JavaScript.
Oh, sorry?
It defaults to a newer version.
Yeah, one that's, yeah.
I
One,
usually use Firefox, but it's, I used it the other day because using Joomla it's better than Safari.
yeah,
And
yeah.
because I'm on Macs, and yeah, it said to me to quickly update it because otherwise I had no security on the software or something. It had what do you call it?
Oh, it needed a security update?
No, it said quickly download it because yeah, I can get bugs and everything.
Yeah, it fixes a lot of security issues, that's for sure. I think the coolest thing, as a side note, is what I was, the site I've been using here, guys, is the standard Joomla template after straight installing, and it's taking up to a second to load the page, which is, is a long time. Yeah, it's just funny to look at that. Anyway, just mentioning it.
You're running it locally.
Yeah.
So what are the little icons you've got? I can see above clear and what is it? It starts with P. Right at the top.
Oh,
Yeah, so
that will clear what you're seeing there. So, so if you were to reload the page.
But above that, what are the icons above that? Can you
Okay.
just-
Yeah. Sure. Sorry, Kim, is it? Nicola. Yeah. I was. Oh, that's nearly reversed.
Very distinctive.
Yes. Okay, so Nicola's just asked what the icons up the top here are. This one basically will just, it brings up a menu for Firebug. So it's just got a whole bunch of interesting stuff, yeah. This one here is what's the word? That comes about when you install FirePHP. So it's probably something you didn't need to know about. This allows you to go back and see where you were previously. So if you go from maybe HTML to YSlow and then back to net, you can. It's basically a history because again it works like a browser, so it's a back and forward. But yeah, and I can't remember what that one does. Oh, that's right. The console displays at the bottom. So that console that that's really cool. I just found that today. I can't remember how I did it, but I found that today.
You just did it again.
Yeah. Oh, no. It's like, I think you've got to... Oh, another thing you were saying about menus and drop-downs. Nicola was saying how if she hovers over something and then tries to click on it to inspect the element, it reloads the page. Pretending that this button here had just happened after hovering over something, you can actually right-click on it and go inspect element. And that way it's not going to reload the page and it'll show up in here now. So that's just a cool little hint. I knew it was something I had to...
There's also the arrow on the top left.
This one here?
Yeah. Click on that and then click on the element.
Yeah, but...
Activate the JavaScript.
It won't, sorry?
It should activate the JavaScript.
But if it's an actual link to a page?
Yeah, fine.
Really?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the whole point of the inspect element.
Okay.
To stop the link or the JavaScript from being executed.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't always work.
Yeah, well that was my thought. Yeah, it doesn't always work, yeah.
Is there a way?
You just got to make sure you click it. It does work.
Is there a way to tell it to just show you CSS for different media, like print media, so you can see what the styles and such would be employed for different things?
That's an extra extension that you can use with Firefox, I believe. You can download an extra extension. It'll allow you... Yes, I don't know what it's called, but it allows you to select what media that you're currently using. So if you're saying, I've created a style sheet for a projector, and you've got 3, you can just select projector and it'll show you on the page what that looks like, and then Firebug will pick that up as well. One thing I forgot to mention again is under layout, it actually shows you, so if I, for instance, I'm going to inspect an element, for instance this one here, it shows me the height and width of it on that particular page, shows me the padding and the border and the margin. But also, I think a cool thing is that also shows you a ruler across the top. So for those who are doing graphic design, that's really helpful.
What size you wanted.
Yeah, so that's really helpful. That's basically, so once you've got to inspect an element first, once you've clicked on it, you go. It would usually come up on the side here, and you can see all the styles. And if you click layout, it shows all these. And then when you hover over it, the center of it, it'll show you the ruler, so you can actually have a look in the exact pixels. Yeah. So that seems to work well. Things like DOM events and computed can be interesting. That just shows you all the styles for that particular element, but it's not sometimes as useful as I'd like it to be. I think the main one is mostly, I think, layout and style. DOM and events are more for people who do programming and creating their own document types. So it might, instead of HTML, it might be their own flavor of HTML or something like that. So Firebug supports those, which is pretty good. And if you're doing, for those who make a page reload dynamically, the net panel will also show that happening in there, and so will the console. And it will show, like if sometimes an Ajax call will take away the content of, for instance, a paragraph, and it will get contact back from the server. If you were to right-click and view source, all you would see is what the page originally loaded, but using the inspect element, you can actually see what's come from the server. So that's what I meant by sometimes the inspect thing will show you what this more than what you're seeing in front of you. Yeah, if that makes sense.
And it supports HTML5.
Yes, I think it does.
One more question.
When did you get some apple?
Right. Oh, did you not have a question?
No.
Oh. Here I am, hoeing through.
I thought it was quite good.
Right.
You can tell I practiced.
I do have a question. Have you tried the web inspector in Chrome?
Yes.
What do you think of it?
As in the extension or as in Firebug?
It's got a built-in inspector.
I don't like it that much. Number one, because I think although Chrome is a very fast browser, and a lot of people use it, and I don't think they're... I guess having used Firebug for a long time and getting used to it, I don't really like having a separate window open and
You can have it open.
in the browser. Yeah, I find it, and sometimes it doesn't show, like it has glitches where it doesn't show you all the HTML. So just the bugs that I've seen it have kind of deterred me. I think I'm a special case though. You know, in any IT, I seem to be able to find all the bugs, but yeah.
Well, I think it's appropriate to thank Andrew for organising tonight, because I know he's a very busy guy. And I was just checking on the site the other day. It's actually almost 12 months since I put forward this topic for a meetup, and we just haven't been able to get the expertise to do a presentation for us until Daniel kindly volunteered. Thank you for that, Daniel.
That's right.
It's a pity that we weren't able to project it, so people could, at the back especially, could
Yeah.
see what was going
Yeah.
on. But
Oh, you'll have 20 or 30 hits straight up for you.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.